who was the very first Chinese exchange nursing student to the United States. And she coincidentally was from Shanghai, just as he was. He got his MD degree, went back to Shanghai, began practicing internal medicine, and his father said, you need to settle down, you need to find someone to get married. And he said, well, I don't really know anybody. The only woman I ever met was back in New York City. But it turns out she had returned to Shanghai as well, and they met up again. And they had kids, my Auntie Jean, and then my dad. And while he was a small baby, I recognized this young male child. He was previously a monk from Beijing. So here you see the proud father, Lo Qingpen, a rich man's family, as they say, because there's a girl and a boy. Although you might not realize this is a boy, because you can see he's wearing a gown. And it turns out that that persisted 90 years. Still wearing a gown. 2 additional children, 2 girls, my Auntie Mary, who's here with us today, and my Auntie Phoebe. And you can see he graduated from wearing a gown to short pants, as was his style in this picture as well. You can see the proud family here. This is one of my favorite pictures. And it seems to be traditional in our family that the son, the only son, is always the second born in the sequence. He excelled in science, getting his college degree. And what you may not realize is he was also somewhat of a ladies' man. In fact, had they had reality TV back then, I'm sure he would have. In medical school, there was one particular beauty who was the #1 person in the class. She always was the first after every exam. She had a photographic memory. There were men in the class who had an incredible crush on her, but not my dad. He was actually angry at her because when his best friends had an incredible crush, he felt that she was being mean to him. So he said, I'm going to teach that girl a lesson. I'm going to get her to fall in love with me, and then I'm going to drop her. And so they got married. So the plan didn't work, as he had hoped. And they graduated from St. John's University in Shanghai, which was actually affiliated with the University of Pennsylvania Divinity School. They got the last plane out of Shanghai before it was overrun by the communists. Now, my understanding is, instead of Bridgeport, they could have settled in Hawaii. Well, thanks a lot, Hawaii. But instead, they moved to Bridgeport because my Auntie Jean was in New York City. They thought they would be close to her. And there's the young intern in 1949. There's his bride and another woman. And then they spent a year in Washington, D.C., then a year in Philadelphia. And then they came to the best hospital in the United States, Hartford Hospital. And he thought he was going to go into pathology, and here he is collecting aortas. It's a fun hobby, isn't it? And what did he do? Well, the mad scientists would freeze-dry them for later use. And in fact, they became very useful in saving lives, replacing an aortic aneurysm. He became a general surgery resident. You can see still the dutiful son honoring his mother and father. And then he became a U.S. citizen, and with that, he decided to enlist in the Army, because you join the Army, you see the world, you go to exotic places. So they went to exotic Missouri. But then he returned to Hartford Hospital. And there, they did some more work on aortas, replacing them with manufactured man-made aortas. But his mentor said, you know, Henry, the real future in surgery is in cardiac surgery. You need to go to a cardiac fellowship. And so his very first night on call at the Peter Van Brigham Hospital in Boston, he was a brand new fellow, and Dwight Harkin, the great pioneer in cardiac surgery, did the world's first aortic valve replacement. My dad was terrified. He called him every 10 minutes. And then he returned to Hartford Hospital to begin a series of firsts, firstly sending aortic aneurysm. He was very inventive. This was for the venous side, where he developed this self-supporting graft here that was actually used to save lives. And then the operation that put me and my sisters through college and medical school, the coronary artery bypass graft, along with valves that were either repaired, valves that were replaced. And then he was the first to recognize the utility of the intra-aortic balloon pump. He got that through the hospital committees at St. Francis and Hartford Hospital. What else could they do? Well, some hearts were too badly damaged, they could not be salvaged. The state motto of Connecticut is, "He who transplanted still sustains." And now we turn to Dr. Schweitzer, a great transplant surgeon, who said to my dad, you know, Henry, I'll make a deal with you. You put in the hearts, I'll keep them alive afterwards. Cardiac surgeons don't understand immunosuppression, but Dr. Schweitzer does. So on this fateful day in November 1984, Hartford Hospital performed their very first heart transplant. That heart that you see in that pan still beats today, 32 years later, in this very room. Andy Gucek, we are so happy to have you. And in so many others, you can see all of these heart transplant recipients. Andy went on to have two beautiful daughters who are now earning their PhDs. It's such a fantastic story for all of us. Now this story hit the national news on Valentine's Day. There was a heart that was available, but it was too far away to get to Hartford in time if you took it by commercial airline. So they enlisted the Strategic Air Command, and using supersonic flight, they were able to retrieve the heart, bring it back to Hartford for another successful heart transplant. And this was reported by Tom Brokaw on the national news because it made the perfect Valentine's Day story. Gives home any heart. What else happened that year? The infamous trip to China, where Henry Hill brought his entire team of specialists, but also his secretary and my sister Jane and myself. He was truly a standout among his classmates. You can see he's very colorful compared to his classmates. And he brought them to Rinji Hospital. And there you can see them signing documents. It made the front page of the Hartford Current. It was a wonderful story, but what made it even more endearing is that he essentially was returning home to Shanghai, and there you see him with his younger sister Phoebe, her husband Michael Sheldon, and that little plaque was on his house where he grew up that was being torn down, and that plaque then sat on the gate to his house in Avon for many years to come. Interestingly, he had confessed that he had never actually gotten his MD degree because they had left China before they could have their graduation. So it was a special reward to him to receive his degree finally at the University of Hartford. So here you see the proud oh, I'm sorry. Here you see the proud graduate with his family. He became chief of UConn, cardiac surgery, and he received the prestigious UConn medal, perhaps the highest honor in a citizen from the state of Connecticut. He did not rest on his laurels there. He got into laser to the myocardium, got into ventricular assist device to bridge patients to heart transplant, or as a device to be used indefinitely, and then Center, and my daughter went to Wesleyan, and one day she was driving on the highway, and she was shocked to see her wearing a billboard. He would routinely go back to Shanghai to operate, and so he received this prestigious honor from them. And then at UConn, the Learning Center was renovated and named after him. At the same time, he was given 2 honorary degrees, medicine and science. No one is more eloquent than Dr. Deckers, and so here, really have a very, very nice testimony to my dad and his many accomplishments. But no one does it by themselves. So many friends, so many people to support him. And so really it's obviously a multidisciplinary team effort. And so all of his success he really owes to all of these people. But you have to ask yourself, what if Henry Lowe, my dad, had not actually ever retired? What if he had kept practicing? What would have happened then? Well, I think maybe something like this. Let's talk about the Henry Lowe you don't know. Henry Lowe, the family man. So, my sister Terry changed his life forever when she turned into a father in 1953. Here you see Henry with some of his favorite things, his beautiful wife, his beautiful daughter, and of course, his beautiful TV. TV has always played a large role in my father's social life. Basically, if you go to his house, his TV is larger than most of their garages. Eventually, they had a couple more kids. You can see there, just as today, I opted for the duck. And then this is my other grandfather, who I actually was privileged to meet. For years, I thought he was wearing some kind of crown, and he was like the king or something, but it was actually the tinsel on the TV behind. Then ultimately, we had Chris. Now, you know how it is. The first child, there's a million photographs. Second child, maybe there's 100. Third child, maybe there's a couple. And with Chris, maybe about the time she was 7, we realized we should probably get a picture of Chris too. He was born in the year of the tiger. Well, but if you ask his children, they would say, no, that's not exactly true. He was actually born in the year of the tiger parent. Because it's a tough deal when you're an Asian father. You have this obligation when you're a father to be what we call a high expectations Asian father. And what that means is, if your child doesn't get an A, they're not working hard enough. They're not doing their job, because after all, we're not Asians, we're Asians. And so you don't say, oh look, Terry's so cute on the phone. You say, why are you on the phone? Go practice piano. And when you get on the piano and start practicing, he reminds you, make one mistake, you disgrace the entire family's face. Why so sad? This is supposed to be a happy occasion. Look at these 2 little kids. Why aren't you opening your presents? Say 1 hour Christmas carol first. A tradition that exists to this day. Now, let me tell you a story. So we grew up in Manchester, Connecticut. We had to walk a mile to get to school every day. Super queue in the middle of the island. And we went to this little tiny school in the Manchester Green School. And in 4th grade, we were studying Scandinavia, region Norway. I did salmon fishing. And my 4th grade teacher, who I love, said, you have to write a report. And it can be on anything about Scandinavia. And so my best friend said, well, they do salmon fishing in Scandinavia. And we didn't have the internet back then, but we did have the Golden Book Encyclopedia. And the Golden Book Encyclopedia, as you can see, had an entire paragraph about salmon. So we thought, well, that's funny for us, because we were 4th graders, what did we know? So my friend got a C, and I got a D. And then I had to go home with my D, and what does my high expectations Asian father say? Later that week, he comes home with this. And he says, "You're going to redo that report." And I said, "What?" He said, "You have to rewrite the report." I said, "We're not even studying Scandinavia anymore. We're on to like another country." He said, "We're going to redo that report." And so for the rest of that school year, that lasted really 10 years, every time I was having fun, he'd say, "How's the fish report going?" I would have to stop what I was doing and go down to the basement and work on this damn fish report. So finally, the last week of school, I turned it in. I feel like an idiot because it's like, it's 1 week to go. And my teacher was very kind and she said, "I hope you always try to do your best in the future." But I have always had this love-hate thing with salmon ever since then. And even though it was a tremendous load off my mind, that summer he took us on rounds, which he liked to do occasionally. Brought us down to the blood bank to introduce us to some of the nurses there. And one of the nurses says, "Oh, is this the little boy that wrote the fish story?" But my dad says, "No, that's what made my son what he is today. He always did his best, and so the secret of his success is this fish book." And we've made up since. We've gone fishing, we've had a great time, and the best thing that ever happened, 2 years ago I went to Alaska, and I actually caught a salmon. And you know what they say? Payback's a fish baby. Payback's a fish. Now, I didn't see a lot of my dad growing up, but one day he came home and he opened up the trunk, and what was inside? 2 gloves, a baseball, and a bat. I was like, "What is that?" And my dad actually took the time to teach me to play catch. And that's why I owe it to him that I became a starting pitcher. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I thought that's downstairs. Okay, so however, I did throw out the first pitch about 6 years ago down in Philadelphia, and it was a strike, and I owe that to my dad. So anytime I see Field of Dreams, and Kevin Costner says, "Hey Dad, you want to have a game of catch?" It makes me cry. I bet you didn't know my dad was Surgeon General of the state of Connecticut. He basically wormed his way into getting this magnet that he could put on his bumper, which meant that gave him a license to speed. Anytime he wanted to go faster than the speed limit, he would clap that thing on and away he would. Did you know he was a chef? In fact, he was a master chef for Gaetanos. He did so well that year, they gave him an encore performance, and he made another showing here. Now, because he was a local celebrity, they said, we have this fundraiser where you can conduct with the Hartford Symphony. Now, our side of the family, we're not actually all that musical. We wish we were, but we're not. And so he realized, I need some expert help. And so he didn't go to his own family. He went to his sister's family. Because the Lambs are all about music. And he said, you have to teach me to conduct so that I look like I know what I'm doing. And so Eva taught him how to do this, and he became the hit of the evening, conducting the can-can, and they sewed the little ribbons onto the back of his tails. Did you know he could ride horses? Did you know that he won the, yeah, that's the ticket, he won the Kentucky Derby. Okay, he's not that great a skier, but he can get down the hill. And he can do this, he can walk in deep snow as well. And then you kind of go, oh wow, that George Bush, well, age 90, he went skydiving, but look at all the help he's got. All you do is fall out of the plane. You don't have to do anything, and these guys come watch you. What my dad did in his 80s was this Navy SEAL. Did you know he was a secret agent? K4 Low, that was his nickname. And here he is. The K stands for Khan. Here you see Khan from Kentucky Fried Movie, for those who remember that. He's communicating there. I think it had something to do with a dating service in China. When you're a secret agent, you have to wear many disguises. Pretending to be this state football player with the help of Julia. But his best disguise, unquestionably the best disguise, was when he would dress up as his sister Jean. I still cannot tell which one is which. Now, my dad helped his old hospital, Renchi, not only rev up their heart surgery program, but also their heart transplant program. So he would go back every year, and of course they wanted to pair him up with their best runners. Some Chinese runners named Wei. And this went on for many years, maybe 7 years or so. And then he started an email correspondence with Wei that became, as you know, a very serious relationship. And so Wei became Henry's second wife. And my daughter made that groom's cake too. You can see the shout out to his cardiac surgery career. And it's worked out. You can see 2009, people said, it wouldn't work out. And in fact, even the minister who married him said, okay, I have to address the elephant in the room. There's that 44-year difference. In fact, I'm pretty sure he referred to him as the Asian half. Because in fact, when they came to get married, they were wearing these hats. They would do a lot of things together. They would golf together. My dad, you can see how calm he is there. The guy beside him, he's sweating bullets because it's killing him. He taught Wei to golf. Wei became really the best female golfer at the Farmington Country Club. In fact, she intimidated all the women that they didn't call her Michelle Wei, they called her Michelle Wei. But, my dad, he's not just a high expectations Asian father, he's a high expectations Asian husband. And you would say, why you can't hit hole-in-one? Yes, in fact, in 1994, he did hit a hole-in-one at the Farmington Country Club. So you can really say that they left their mark on the golf course. Now, they still love to fish, so this is my dad named Fish. Here's my dad fishing away. They travel around the world to very exotic places, basically Rome, Spain, London, and sometimes they cheat and they go to Venice, but it's not really Venice. And this is what's neat. He's had this lifelong relationship with his sisters. And they stayed together almost forever. Here, when my Auntie Jean turned 90, a couple years ago, everyone loves ice cream, even when you're 90. They would sing at the piano here. You can see recounting those good old days in Shanghai. And then after an exhausting evening of singing, what do? You do the favorite low technique, which is take a nap. Now, it's been a full life, and what do you do when you've had such a full life? Well, you try to write your memoirs, but it's not really that easy. It's really hard to write. But if you're going to talk about it, you want to talk about all the people you've grown up with, all the people you've met. And when you're a secret agent, you also have to talk about your secret identities. And so they said, you're in America, you need a secret American family. So here he called Mrs. Warren his mother, Angela was his daughter, and then Shelby was his granddaughter. can see here a long, long history, over 30 years with Angela. And then every now and then he'd say, oh, I also have some other adopted kids, Doug, Jane's husband, and then David here, who is now here today with his children, Bryce and Sandra. And for those of you who said, well, I haven't seen my face in this whole show yet, hopefully you'll see that. I so appreciate that all my cousins are here. It's so wonderful to have you here supporting us. But let's take a time travel trip way, way back, more than 50 years. Okay, oh, by the way, notice this picture. So who's the outlier cousin in this picture? It's Carol way over here on the right. You can see she barely made it in. She's not even looking at the camera. So, you go back in time, and who's the outlier? It's Carol again. Would you believe that's the Honorable Carol Lamb there, sitting there, not paying attention, showing us her underpants? All of my cousins, all of my sisters are beautiful. I'm very, very proud of that. And my dad, this is one of many, many wonderful birthday parties he's had. My mom threw one for him when he was 60, when my only daughter was Jenny. When he turned 74, I heard him whisper before he blew out the candles, I want to live forever. That was his birthday. And so, no surprise, he made it to at least 86. And for some reason, that casino became the official place to have my dad's birthday party. So the next year, same restaurant. The next year, same restaurant. So we have standing reservation there every, January 29th. But the tough thing about living forever is that not everyone follows you on your journey. And so, over the years, of course, we've lost so many wonderful people, so many people that we love. And at my Auntie Phoebe's memorial, I found out that my cousin Rhoda has a better sense of humor than I have. She gave an amazing talk. It was so funny. And then his colleagues, Dr. Rossi, always had his back, kept him alive for so many years. Dr. Mack, who just died, was his chief resident when my mother and he started as interns in Bridgeport. And we recently lost his mother and Mrs. Fisher. But the two people we miss the most, of course, are my mother, who was one of the most brilliant, beautiful women in the world, and my sister Jane, also absolutely gorgeous. And if Jane were here, she would have given the most eloquent speech about her relationship with my dad, because they had a special bond. But the good thing about living forever is that someday you become a grandfather, and you can take your grandkids to Disney World, whether it's back then or 20 years later. Now, I will confess that 2 of the 3 low men in that picture are trying their best to hold their guts in. Take the picture, take the picture. And the neatest thing about Disney World, why do we love going to Disney? Because you can always find a Chinese laundry there. And my dad loves Disney in particular because of this character, because they were both born in the year of the Tigger. He took my kids and my nephew to China, but as Julia complained, well, I wasn't even born yet, I didn't get to go to China. But Julia was special because she was born about a year after my mom died. And so my dad strongly suspects that Julia is really the reincarnation of my mom. Eventually you see your kids grow up, get married, and then extra special is the girl that made me a grandfather, my little Evelyn. It's been a great life with Jane and Mary. We're so glad that they're here with us today. And I really think he is going to live forever. So even though this iconic pose of him, and he liked to do that, that self-assured, self-confident pose in front of the temple of heaven. It really should be the temple of heaven can wait. Because my dad is going to go on forever.